My name is Balliett, and I live in Chicago, in Illinois, and I'm a writer. I write mysteries that are fiction, but they're set in real places and filled with real ingredients. The novels I've written are Chasing Vermeer, The Right Three, The Calder Game, The Danger Box, and I'm working on a new book right now. I love writing about Chicago, but the thing is, I would be writing about wherever I was living because it's more the way I see my world. Chicago becomes mysterious when I look at it in certain lights, but that would be true no matter where I lived, I know that. I use real places in my work, and when I'm writing a book, I'll go back again and again and again and look. I'll go back again and again and again and listen. I'm somebody who is very, very aware of the power of place, and I'm always looking and smelling and touching things. I always want to touch things. I love that sense that I'm uncovering something in the familiar world, and it's also about kind of waking up your mind to something you're familiar with, and you realize you're always surrounded by mysteries if you pay enough attention. My notebook is essential to me. I carry it all the time. This is my little notebook that I carry with me everywhere that has notes that I refer to. In fact, I use my notebook the way some people use a camera. I kind of take a picture of places with it. I'll describe conversations. I'll describe what the light is like. I'll talk about what it feels like sitting where I'm sitting and watching. So I try to turn myself kind of into a sponge and soak up as much as I can in my environment and put it into words. When I go back and look at those notes, for me that brings the place right back into my mind. I like having a map at the front of each book because it's real world, but it's also a way to step into that world in your imagination if you're reading the book and you're not there. In the map in Chasing Vermeer, I'm showing my neighborhood. I'm showing streets that I've walked over hundreds of times. When I look at it, I think, oh, that's the route that I walked when I walked to school as a teacher. This is where the bookstore is. This is, my house is down that street over there. It's my world. When I'm starting to research a place, the first thing I'll do is, if I can get there physically, I'll get myself into it and kind of throw myself in. If I can't get there physically, I will start by researching on the internet. I use the Chicago Public Library a lot. Any public library is really helpful. Once they know that you're really looking for something, there's always somebody at a library who will help you dig. Sometimes I end up looking at old newspapers. Usually you can do that through a library. I get books from our neighborhood bookstore. My husband has been a wonderful partner in the making of these books in that he likes to take photographs. And those photographs go into my thinking, and often they have something to do with the illustrations too. Chasing Vermeer is about two kids who live in my neighborhood in Hyde Park in Chicago, and they are chasing a stolen Vermeer painting, a priceless painting that adults around them have not been able to find. So here's the section that comes right out of my living room into the book, and what I'm describing is the character Calder Palay's living room on Harper Avenue. On late afternoons in the fall, the sun came through the leaded glass window in the Palay's living room and threw rainbows and wavery rhombi and polygons on the floor, the walls, the backs of chairs and sofas. This parade of soft color traveled slowly up one side of the room and vanished in the corner of the ceiling. Grandma Ranjana always swore that sitting in geometry helped the brain. Calder began to write. And actually, there have been many times where at home I sit in the geometry that's created by the shadows coming through that leaded glass window in my living room. It's one of the details that is in my book as fiction, and you wouldn't know that it was really a part of my everyday life unless I told you, and I'm telling you now. When I walk down Harper Avenue, I really never know quite what I'm going to see, and it's a street of details. The houses are close to each other, they're small, they're different from each other. I love these little paths that run between the houses on Harper. And in full summer, it becomes like a little green tunnel, and it kind of invites you in. And if I find something that really interests me, I'm carrying my current writing notebook. There it is. I would just stop for a second and jot it down, which I'm used to doing. Harper Avenue was a narrow, crooked street that ran next to the tracks. Both Petra's and Calder's bedroom windows looked out on a landscape of horizontals and verticals, peppered with gravel and leaves. Petra loved the stories filed neatly into the flow of train windows. Depending on whether she held her eyes still or let them race with the cars, she would see either a blurry sequence punctuated with bright threads of color or a single glitter of a moment. I love watching these trains go by because you never know who's going to be peeking out a window. Powell's is a delicious place to hang out in. Powell's was one of Petra's favorite places. It was peaceful, and you never knew what you might find. It looked more like a warehouse than a store. Books were piled everywhere, and the rooms were jumbled together in a mismatched way. Although Petra had been inside many times, it always felt like a labyrinth. One dimly lit area led to the next, and suddenly you were back where you started without knowing how you got there. No one asked if you needed help. No one frowned if you read but didn't buy. What I love about Powell's is that I feel like you could find a book in here that would take your life in another direction. I'm now sitting right inside this passage in my book. On the following Monday, they took the train to the Art Institute and walked several blocks in the October sunshine. It was difficult to keep up with Miss Hussey's bouncy stride. Calder noticed with approval that she never even looked back to see if everyone was with her. She was one trusting teacher. After they ate bag lunches next to the bronze lions on the steps of the museum, they fanned out into the European wing. Petra took off on her own. She passed the Degas dancers, the big painting made completely of dots, the Monet haystacks and bridges, and headed into the older works. I was so delighted when I found this painting, and I knew as soon as I took a good look at it that it was going to be a part of Chasing Vermeer. Turning a corner, he spotted something promising. It lay on a bedside table inside a French painting by an artist named Auguste Bernard. The letter was folded up but had a red wax seal that had been broken. He knew this meant it had been opened. The woman next to the letter was rolling her eyes, and her dress was ridiculously small for the top part of her body. Calder concentrated on the table, which also had a necklace of beads and a book with French words on it. He was copying the words down, L'art dem, when the wall behind him moved. There are so many pieces of art from all ages that need to be captured in books still. And maybe you'll be the one to do what I did one day. This is a passage in Chasing Vermeer that takes place in a real building. Neither Calder nor Petra had realized how big the original part of Delia Dell Hall was. It twisted and turned gracefully, a rectangular dance with surprises in scale and mood. One moment it was grand, the next cozy. Petra, resting her hand on the railing as they walked slowly down the sweeping staircase, stopped with a jolt. Calder kept going. The railings were a delicate tangle of iron grapevines and creatures. There were birds, mice, and lizards. Instead of newel posts at the bottom of the staircase, an intricately carved oak monkey clung to either end of the railing. I love this building. It's filled with details of all kinds. They're on the walls and the paneling, in the ceiling, in this amazing plaster work with grapes and crests, and all the way running up the stairs, ironwork, gargoyles, creatures. Everywhere you look in Idenoise, there's something amazing that tells its own story. I love to write about place, and I have a very special challenge for you. I want you to pick a place. It could be your neighborhood, it could be some other place in the country that you're curious about, and make a map of it, a detailed map, and write a guidebook that is so filled with fascinating details that you've researched or observed, details that you've somehow found out about, that you will make me really, really want to come visit that neighborhood. And I promise you, as you're doing this, you will see this neighborhood in a different way. It's really fun to look at one place in great detail. It'll be surprising. It's a promise.